the very reality of our lives is that of consciousness. That is the supreme reality that we experience on a daily basis. But we don't know it because we let the thinking process lead our attention away from oneself. So because the truth of our lives is that of the supreme reality, our very purpose in life is to return to that and to know that consciousness is all there is, and that the well-being we are looking for in one way or another is that well-being that is inherent to consciousness as bliss. The best way to describe what reality is really about is in the saying that consciousness is Sat Chit Ananda. Sat being Chit existence and Ananda as bliss, as a result of seeing consciousness and existence as one. So there appears to be a threefold process before one can factually, directly confirm for oneself that one has understood, realized, and integrated the realization of one's true nature. At first, there appears to be a process following which one needs to understand the true nature of consciousness as that which is aware of that I am, out of which a world is perceived, a world of objects, of perception. So as one delves into going deeper and deeper into realizing that one is first and foremost awareness, one comes to slowly but surely understand the very nature of consciousness as being, not as existing in terms of something we can perceive as an object, as external to oneself, but as simply being, meaning that one comes to realize oneself as standing independently from mind and the world of perception, as understanding that one knows that one is, that awareness alone is aware without any objects of perception, any objects that awareness may be aware of, that awareness knows itself independently from all objects whatsoever. And as one goes deeper into awareness, as if there was someone there, when there is no such a thing, when there is only awareness that somehow comes to mistake itself for this mind, consciousness comes to reveals itself as being that which constitutes any thing or any elements that are part of existence, as that which we come to experience on a daily basis within existence, as this personal that we come to identify with. So one comes to see and understand and know that within existence, at the heart of all existence is consciousness, that everything of existence, everything of experiences is made out of consciousness. Therefore, one comes to live a life on the level of the personal, while perfectly being aware that there may be such a thing taking place, while standing firmly into consciousness, as the knowing that one is consciousness and that existence is also consciousness. Just like the ocean is one and yet appears as waves, so is our consciousness remaining at one with it all while experiencing a multitude of aspects that is this personal so-called existence, without being bound to it, without being affected by it, without having to reap the fruits of such personalhood. So this is culmination of realization, where you come to experience that whatever is going on the level of the personal or in your own personal life is no longer something you identify with, and that whatever may be taking place on that level of such personal life no longer traps you into whatsoever. In fact, your own personal life comes to be seen as a mere cinema show. A cinema show that is of the same nature as everything else of existence, as of the world, even as of consciousness. So there is this big misconception about the whole path leading to self-realization, which is that to start with, one holds on to the idea that there is such a thing as a personal self, existing independently from consciousness, as if consciousness was a mere abstract concept, something outside of oneself. And then, through all these ideas of having to uncondition oneself or heal oneself, or through lengthy practices, the so-called personal comes to realize consciousness, thereby living a life as a result of that realization for itself. When in truth, there is no such a thing as an independent entity, as an entity that exists independently from consciousness. So in truth, self-realization, as what it is in reality, is to come to the deep understanding that all there has ever been is the reality of consciousness alone. That in truth you've always been that. And there is only that, and there will only always be but that. And along with this misconception, there is, of course, this other assumption that the personal needs to purify itself in order for consciousness to reveal itself. On one side, it's true, but on one other side is not true, because the fact remains that you can already but be yourself to start with. And if you're very honest with yourself, here and now, not tomorrow, not in relation with what you think you have been, but if you are that honest with yourself, here and now, devoid of all your memories, knowledge, and assumption, you know that you are. You know that you are devoid of any ideas about yourself, and that you are that which knows, that I am in its utmost purity, itself forever the case, the eternal self. So here in Satsang, it is an opportunity to understand the truth of that I am, alone. But sure enough, as the fact remains that we come to somehow experience a duality with that I am, there arises a need to know that which we are not. That is, all these tendencies to take our mind, body, to be who we are, as to take for granted that what's going on in your mind points at anything real. So therefore, as a consent to not abiding and standing as the truth of that I am, we inquire. We inquire as to know exactly, perfectly, directly who that one is who experiences whatever is experienced in the moment. So inquiry into the self means to turn the mind's attention within itself. As itself, by itself, for itself, till the truth stand forth. As much as you can simply rest as yourself, in the very sense of beingness that you are, as quick as the truth of that I am stand forth. As much as the knowing, the certainty that you are takes over. So as much as there appears to be a process following which the consciousness becomes the foreground of your experience, as much as until then one needs to practice, one needs to abide in the recognition and the truth of that I am. And yet, regardless of whether there comes a time where there remains consciousness alone or not in your experience, there is absolutely no moment where you cannot tap into the truth that you are, the consciousness, for there is only consciousness. It is more a matter of how much you are giving ways to the illusions of mind or not. The less you let the mind drive your attention externally within objects of mind and perception, the more you're allowing the truth of that I am to stand forward. Then there is no doubt. Then your whole life, the way it unfolds, or what your life has been, or what your life will become, becomes of any concern whatsoever. Therefore, there remains an indifference, total indifference, but not an indifference in the sense that you identify with a void, a so-called void, but an indifference that comes out of the very realization that everything and nothing is your own self. That there is no such a thing as an entity existing separately from the self that you are, and that consciousness is about as of existence is also about as a whole. Not as one consciousness or another, not as the manifested side of consciousness or as the unmanifest side of consciousness, but as consciousness as a whole, where consciousness and existence are one and the same. Then whether there is dilemmas taking place in your life, or that you are experiencing some heights or realizing much of what it is to be yourself, it all appears as a play of consciousness, and that you stand beyond that. You stand beyond, you stand prior, within, and after. That everything appearing and disappearing is merely a mode of modification taking place as a play within the truth of that I am. So if you're that serious about reaching a place of embodying consciousness, if you are that serious, then know that you are that here and now. That is the direct path. The direct path leading to the realization that you've never been apart from yourself. Have you ever been apart from yourself? Even when you may have thought that you were not yourself, or that you have some kind of memory that you have not been yourself. In order for you to say that, you must have been there. Isn't it? Even when we seek the dreamless state, when we go to sleep, although on some level we don't know much about it, because in the dreamless state there is precisely nothing to be known about. One still knows that one has been there. Even if one knows or thinks that one wasn't there, or that in fact there was nothing to be known about, one must have been there in order to say that, isn't it? So in truth, there is no moment whatsoever in your whole existence where you have not known that you were as consciousness. So in reality, self-realization is simply about coming to a perfect understanding that all there has ever been is that you have been precisely the Supreme Consciousness alone. Everything else has only been passing by. Everything else will keep coming and going on whatever level that may be. And yet, the very primary element taking place in whatever experience remains the same. That is that I am. Therefore, the invitation is to remain as that I am throughout existence, until it is perfectly revealed that existence is also that I am. Then you can flow. You can flow in consciousness. You can flow in existence. For they are one and the same. Therefore, the best description about the nature of reality is that of Sat Chit Ananda, being, existence, and bliss. Bliss because your very state, so-called state, for it is not a state, is the only reality as a whole, untouchable, untaintable, forever free. So to think in terms of an individual coming to a realization of consciousness, as much as it underlies a craving for the truth on some level, as much as it can also be a trap. As long as you'll hold on to this idea that some days you'll come nearer to such realization, as much as you'll postpone the possibility to be that here and now. Everything of time pertains to mind, not to consciousness. Everything of time belongs to the mind, to the thought process, out of which perceives objects are experienced. So whatever you experience is of the nature of perceived objects. It will come, it will go. If you look for self-realization as an object of experience, it will come, it will go. Consciousness as being is not an object. It is itself being. It knows itself by itself and to itself independently from any perceived objects. As such, the I Am cannot be sought, cannot be experienced from a place of the personal. Although the fact remains that, in truth, what we are factually experiencing is that of the I Am on a daily basis. It is the only truth taking place throughout any experiences, for you must be there first to confirm of whatever experiences may be taking place on one level or another. So as being, it is stateless, and yet it remains the only permanency found throughout any experiences. For you must be there in order to confirm of anything taking place in your experience. So there is no moment you are not experiencing the truth of yourself. In fact, this is all we are experiencing, that I Am. Everything else we are not experiencing, because everything else does not exist. Everything else is an illusion. Everything else is a mode of perception, depending on where your attention goes, depending on how much attention you give into objects of mind. So when you go to whatever difficulties, or even when you do experience some higher states of consciousness, that which is aware of it all is also that which is aware of everything else, on whatever level. That remains and will remain. That was, that is, that will be. Therefore, as much as you abide as that, as much as you're out of samsara. In fact, samsara does not even exist. In fact, nirvana is the truth, everlasting, permanent. So how to get out of samsara? By realizing that there's only been nirvana. Samsara is a mode of perception. Nirvana is to move beyond perceptions. It's to know the perceiver, to know that one is even prior to the perceiver.
It seems to me that samsara is based on the concept of time truly existing in space. Time and space truly existing, where it's really there is no time and space. Ultimately, there's no perception, as you say, nirvana is beyond perception. There's no perception, but yet it seems that it's a catch-22, as if there is and there isn't simultaneously.
At the moment you see it, that's what's the most important, to see what is taking place as it is. Mm-hmm. So if you see that you're giving rise to perception, letting perceptions create your experience, mm-hmm. as to create your future, mm-hmm. and solidifying at the same time the past, mm-hmm. that alone is enough. Because the seeing of it as it is itself the clarity of mind. But when you superimpose a perception over a perception over a perception, then you go down the rabbit hole. And then of course once you're in it, once you're experiencing the consequence of having given ways to perceptions, then the tendency is to react as if that was the whole reality, right? Because you are experiencing it on all these different levels. Because at the moment you give importance to the mode of perceptions as mind, subsequently you come to feel it within your body as emotions, sensations, thereby assuming that such experience is real.
So if in that experience of sensation, of say pain, well, there's so many labels you can put on it. Let's say discomfort, sensation of discomfort on any level, whether it's psychological or physical or energetic or any of those. I mean, quite often I notice that all of that is there, but it's still, it's not as if I can do anything about it. I'm just watching that that's the state of the body, mind, the energy body, whatever. And that due to whatever life circumstances are, that's just what's happening. So, the part of me that still thinks I'm a separate entity thinks that I should be able to get beyond this and be more in control of this and be able to know that I am always free. I do know that I truly am free of whatever's going on, but it doesn't mean it's going to disappear because I have a body and a mind, and they just do their own thing. So, and that can be uncomfortable quite a lot because that's a human incarnation. It's just that's the way it is, it seems. I'm just kind of spelling. If you can clarify any of this, I'd appreciate it.
You see, the thing to understand perfectly is that it's not that there is such a thing as someone that needs to get to a place where all these phenomena no longer touches you. Then understanding that place in consciousness which itself alone remains untouched by it all.
But that's what we are. We truly are that, right?
Yeah.
And I know that, and I am abiding as that quite often. But it's when I'm not abiding. I am that, but it's if the coupling comes of whatever is happening in the body mind that's very contracted. I would say like more contracted, slower, denser kind of energetic in the body. And that then I have to use my intellect to remember that that is not really there, or that that is temporary, that's transitory, or however my intellect has to come into play, then to not take it as if it's true, as if it's really real. And I'm kind of telling you my little way of looking at this, but I don't know quite how. I find it difficult to express it really because it's as if I know I am totally free. There's no such thing as purifying because I already am pure and free. Like who we all are is pure and free and undivided consciousness, whatever words you want to give to that. So it's but yet still there's suffering. So then it seems to me that it's just I don't quite understand why I have to do that way, I guess. And I'm very naive in some ways. The awareness.
Why there can be everything as it is? No matter what it is, why can it all be just the way it is, including suffering? Can you accept it all as it is? Surrender to it.
Yeah, that's...
Let it be.
Yeah.
Let it be exactly as it is.
Yeah, and in that letting it be and accepting it exactly as it is,
then what happens?
Life just goes on, and the movement of life itself goes on, and it changes because the suffering doesn't isn't always there. It's just there at different times.
But even if it's there,
Right.
even if it's there,
Totally, and then to really be able to abide in that we are.
that consciousness lives at the heart of suffering. That within suffering there is liberation. Can you see that?
That's opening into that. Yeah.
So consciousness is not outside existence.
Right.
In fact, it is when you see consciousness within existence, then you know, then you understand what is the true nature of consciousness. Then existence is accepted as it is, even through its outmost form of suffering.
Wow.
Then there is no distancing between an entity and such experience as suffering. When the two become one, then the true nature of reality is exposed. That is Satchit Ananda. The real problem with suffering is not suffering itself. It's that we suffer from not being able to be one with the suffering.
Wow.
That is suffering. Suffering is the very phenomena of duality. That is to oppose a resistance to whatever is taking place in your experience. So in truth, the way to self-realization is not outside existence, is right inside existence. That existence, as it is the way. So you accept existence as it is, you come straight to consciousness. Therefore, existence can only already be consciousness. So in that regard, there is no one apart from consciousness, as there is no one that needs to get out of existence in order to become one with consciousness. The gap between existence and consciousness must be taken out. That is to accept existence as it truly is. If realization of self were just about tapping into consciousness independently from existence, that would only be halfway. In fact, it would double the duality that we are experiencing as a separate self. But when one first understands the nature of consciousness as existing independently from whatever is taking place, from the point of view of the separate self, and that within consciousness, existence is not apart, then you walk the other half. Then you come back to existence and see that existence is also consciousness, then there is a proof of your understanding as that you are consciousness. And this is how consciousness goes through existence. This is how consciousness comes to take over your so-called personal existence. That your very existence, no matter what it is, whether on the level of the personal you are having a wealthy life or that you are having a poor life, it makes absolutely no difference. For existence is consciousness. Hence bliss. That whoever you are, no matter your circumstance, bliss is a given. Bliss is inherent to the truth of yourself. So to know that in consciousness there lies the only freedom is the step to take. It is not about having to do anything or not on the level of believing that we are this separate self. First, understand the true nature of consciousness. Know that the freedom you are looking for is already within consciousness, that you are consciousness, first and foremost. Confirm that for yourself, and you will have a laughter about it all. And this is the beauty of it. Because then you no longer need to be concerned about yourself. Therefore, you're no longer concerned about what's taking place in your life. And that you're no longer depending on whatever takes place in your life. It has no longer anything to do with you as consciousness. For you are already complete, full, and free. Forever knowing that bliss is within you at all times, no matter what. And that bliss is at the heart of existence, at the heart of the worst or the best of existence. Isn't that a relief? To know that there's nothing to change.
It's just happening sometimes. Change is it's happening. There's no relief, you never know it. How the unfolding will go.
Yeah, but that is if you rely on what it is that is taking place.
To feel good.
Yeah. Then sure enough,
It will be a mess.
then you will experience the duality. Because everything will come and go. The heights will become the low, the waves. Nothing solid, tangible, permanent lies on that level. And again, whatever takes place as waves in your experience do not exist in and of themselves. They are mere mode of perception. What's really taking place as reality is that of I am. That is the only permanency. Everything else is your own creation, as perception, as how much of your interest is given in one perception or another, thereby creating your experience. Remain in the state of no experience. That is, in fact, the very truth of the experience that is taking place as reality. So by giving your interest into perception, you come to veil the truth that you are one with reality, thereby creating a separation that leads to not only karma, but to suffering. For you come to deny yourself. The greatest sin is to deny oneself. Now, of course, the idea is not to deny existence. It's not about rejecting one experience or the other that may take one form or another, as to say no to perception. But it is to see everything as it is, to have discernment as to what it is that is taking place. Whether you are aware or not aware, that you are aware of being aware of that which is aware of it all, or not, that is the question. So when you see everything as it is, to see what is what as it is, whether you see whatever takes place as existence or as consciousness, that is what keeps you in balance, out of which there is right thinking, right action, right understanding. That is the very meaning of oneness. That is union within Sat, Chit, Ananda. So being open, being aware of whatever is taking place within existence is not only to get to a mere place of consciousness as something that exists independently from existence alone, but to understand that the true nature of consciousness is of wholeness, that existence takes place also in wholeness. Thereby, everything of existence is seen in the right perspective. And so you can be at one also with existence, that existence and consciousness are one reality. So if everything of existence is a mode of perception, that means that it's taking place in you. Therefore, existence as a whole takes place in you, that you are there prior to everything of existence as of consciousness. You are this supreme reality. So when you say to yourself that, somehow try to convince yourself that you need a certain experience, know that what you call the so-called experience is a mere perception. That nothing stands outside of perception. That nothing that takes place in perception exists. What happens then? You remain free of it. It's only when you have convinced yourself that what it is you perceive is real that you are bound to it, that you need it, without which your life would have no purpose, that your sense of self would have no meaning. See everything as it is, and you will clearly understand that all is a matter of perception, that you create your reality, positively or negatively, that you are beyond. That you are the supreme reality. That is the only freedom.
So essentially, nothing is needed on the level of experience, but when there's pulls in certain directions, then that's just what's happening. So there's a surrender to that. Like, sometimes I think I imagine it's like external reality surrendering to that, but then there's also internal reality surrendering to that, and finding my way with those two sides.
In truth, they are one and the same. Because even whatever you call your external reality takes place in you. The more you come to believe that it's happening outside of you, the more you seek the external manifestations. The more you see it as taking place within you to start with, the less you look for it externally. And in truth, the more externally it will happen in resonance with you, confirming for yourself that this is the truth. But everything appearing externally are mere pointers to your state of mind, your state of consciousness, as a measure to see how much you abide as the truth of yourself and as how much you give into the mind. So your approach or reaction to whatever takes place in your existence are meant to be that way in order to go back within and understand that you are the creator of it by how you are with yourself, how you relate with your own self.
So I imagine there's nothing to try to fix or change on that level, but just being with what those reactions are. And noticing the scenes of the
Noticing is the first step. Once noticing takes place, then you're drawn to know better what consciousness is really about, in order to become closer and closer to the truth of yourself, and as a result, to see that confirm in your existence as the way you move through existence. No matter what takes place, it's not in what takes place. Forget about that. Even if the times are difficult, often, as a matter of fact, it is really when things are not going well that you can really dive deep inside. Get rid of all the unnecessary superficial aspects of yourself and tune into your inner strength. So don't think that because things are not going well that it's an indication that things are really not going well. In truth, it's the opposite. Yeah, the mind looks the other way around.
Yeah.
It seeks the superficial, the non-real. Gets blinded by the unreal. So it is how you navigate through existence which matters, not in what takes place. Because what's going to take place will come and go. Whereas that which you acquire through meeting challenges as a way to deepen your awareness of yourself, that will stay with you.
I think a natural tendency of human being is to just be comfortable.
Which never fully takes place, right? You have more, you need more.
That's right.
And more. All of a sudden it's like, it's going the other way around.
Yeah.
You have less. Yeah, when everything goes well, you don't need to look at yourself, right? You're in Disneyland. But when things are going different ways that you weren't expecting, especially in the opposition of what you expected as a means to become more happy, then this is very good for you. But then you see where you are. Because everything that happens only happens because of your perception. Then you know where you really are at in relation with yourself. For everything is a mirror to your own self. That is all. The key is in your hand at all times, no matter what, because everything is a mere perception. So when everything goes well, you don't need to look at that. As much as we seek things to go well, as much as it can be a curse when everything goes well. for then you don't need to look within. Then you don't need to go beyond the limitations that you create for yourself. So it's better to not want anything to be different. You live your life as it is. It reflects back on your state of consciousness. You live it as it is. Your state of consciousness becomes clear. You become consciousness, and existence becomes consciousness. There is peace, there is fullness, there is bliss, no matter what. So when things are not going well, go beyond the resistance. Don't let the mere present perceptions take you over. Go through the layers of perceptions and be honest with what it is that is truly taking place. See whether your reactions determine your state of being, or whether you can rise above perception. And you will see that the space that is truly there as reality, into which these phenomena are passing by, remains. Therefore, the space as a pointer to your freedom remains at all times, whether there is bad time, a good time, whether there is something, whether there is nothing, you remain immortal. Immortal within this mortality.